Yes, Julie, thank you so much. Um, Thank you for being here. So, ahoy, mamas. Welcome, welcome, welcome aboard the Mother Wild Global Education Summit Mothership. Let's go ahead and roll shoulders up and back and down, and let's take 3 deep inhales and 3 loud sighs out. So, first deep inhale in through the nose, loud sigh out through the mouth. Second deep inhale in through the nose, loud sigh out through the mouth. Third and deepest inhale in through the nose. And loud sigh out through the mouth. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So ladies and ladies, the topic today is imagining the schools of the future. Very exciting. This is our first ever Mother Wild panel discussions. We've had bazillions of discussions, but never in this format. So this is very exciting. I did do a little bit of research and I read somewhere that as the moderator, I need to say thank you to answers and stay neutral and not get carried away with my emotions. We'll see about that. I'll try. So this summit is for mothers only. There might be some accidental swearing, but it's intentional. It's for emphasis only and is especially for those mothers of young ears that have to watch what they say all day. So the format is we'll save the last 15 minutes for open Q&A. So if anything gets stirred up, just jot it down and make sure that you bring it up at the end. And I will keep the intros short of our panelists so we can jump right in to our topic quickly. So first, and if you can mute yourself, that would be great, just to keep the audio. And yes, so we've invited a diverse group of panelists intentionally. Hopefully they each have unique views and they represent different countries. And it's purposefully has different flavors. So, Jilly, when I talk about someone, can we maybe put a spotlight so we know who I'm talking? I guess we can read their names, but just in case someone's listening to the audio in the future, hello in the future, and they're not seeing the images. So actually they won't see the images anyway, so it doesn't matter. So first, I'd love to introduce Noam Gerstein, who is the founder of Bina, a cross geo-digital full primary school developing proprietary tech-based methodology called Precision Education. She's a frequent speaker at education conferences. Noam is also a published thought leadership she has published thought leadership articles in various outlets. She's originally from Jerusalem. Noam now lives in Berlin, raising her 2 children in a quadlingual, Globish included, mobile environment. Kavita Tana, welcome. She's a master educator and creative designer of integrated curriculums units, weaving impactful learning experiences, well-being, curriculum standards, learning outcomes, state IB, honors, AP, and UN Sustainable Developmental Goals into unified experiences that restore joy to learning and teaching. She also co-facilitates project-based learning workshops and coaching sessions, linking staff to learners, educators, and experts around the world. Welcome, Meredith Hinshaw Cheney. She is an advocate for equitable education, currently serving as Communications and Development Director at one of New York City's longest-running public charter schools. In this role, she advances the school's mission to develop global citizens and youth leaders grounded in peace, sustainability, and human rights. With experience teaching writing at the college level and pursuing I looked it up, it's ed, in teaching, learning, and technology focused on AI and creativity. Meredith is dedicated to making education more accessible, innovative, and impactful for learners everywhere. Welcome. Annalise Corbin is a champion for STEM and STEAM education through the nonprofit she launched in 2000, the PAST Foundation. With a background in anthropology and nautical archaeology, her mission is to change the landscape of teaching, learning, and the future of work. She's a Texan native who has spent the last 2 decades building partnerships with state and local governments, kindergarten through 12th grade schools, post-secondary institutions, and businesses all across the board to create innovative educational programs, including Makers Manias, rural education models and design challenges. And we have Kristen Schorf. Sorry if I'm like bulldozering through your name. So she's an experienced educational leader who has been working to bring innovative educational options to families for more than a decade. She is the CEO of Prisma, the world's most engaging virtual school that combines a supportive community and personalized coaching with an innovative curriculum that brings out kids' love of learning and prepares them to thrive in the rapidly changing world of the future. And is Kate McAllister in the house? She said she would try to join, but I think she's not here. Okay, so that's great. We have 6 little screens. So welcome, ladies. It's such an honor to have you in the same Zoom room. My friend Mimi, who works at PETA, she takes photos of herself in Zoom rooms with Jane Goodall and Greta. That's how I feel right now. So I'm going to take a photo. I'll send it to her. So we're all here on this with the same goal, which is to shake up the traditional educational model. And I think we're not the only ones. This has been going on for hundreds of years. But yeah, so today we're including many different forms of, different angles from progressive schools, innovative schools, alternative schools, which for the sake of convenience, we'll group them to belong to the global school system, which is what I was saying yesterday at the opening. These global schools are still minuscule compared to the national schools and the international school system. And my personal vendetta with this summit and behind the Medium piece and the podcasts and organizing this meetup, it's with a bunch of educators in Thailand. It's really just to lay down the foundation for global education so that it can become mainstream. It can compete against I believe there are 4 million national schools in the world. There are 20,000 international schools, and there are only, I would say, less than 80 global schools. So we have some work to do to get to that mainstream level where parents can just be like, oh yeah, global school it is. So and of these, like I would say 70, 75 alternative global schools, a lot of them are working in silo, and I would love for them to agree on they have something to graduate with. We all agree on the same ideologies. It's just how do we bring it together? So they say to create a new paradigm, it's the only way to make the old one obsolete. So I think there's going to be hybrids, overlaps, and yeah, just to make it clear, the students we're talking about are the ones who are being homeschooled. They're also going to brick and mortar schools. They're doing these online schools. They're being unschooled. They're being homeschooled. They're sort of schooled. I think I draw the line at the religious extremist, but that's for a different discussion. So come and learn from women who have made it their life's work to turn away from traditional education to build a new global model. So together, let's foresee what schools could look like in 30 years' time. I'm going to wear my captain hat, and I'll first direct one question to each of you, if that's okay with you, and then we'll have open questions, and any of you that feels inspired to answer them, feel free to, and then we'll open it up in the last 15 minutes for the audience to ask their questions. So first up, I would love to address Noam, if possible. First, I wanted to say that I recently interviewed Victoria from Prisma, who's the founder. We have Kristen here, who is the CEO, but Victoria I mean, her bio is so impressive. She's graduated summa cum laude. She got an MBA from Harvard Business School. She was named Fortune's magazine 40 under 40 list. She was recognized by President Obama in 2013 for her contributions to entrepreneurship. And in her early 20s, she sold a company to Google for $500 million. So I love when I get these like really successful profiles. I mean, according to traditional success models. And then she's decided to dedicate her life to go into this progressive schooling direction. So similarly, Noam, you're someone.
I wouldn't take that at all. Like, not similarly. We have incredibly different paths, and hers is amazing. But
I was going to say you did thrive in academia. I mean, you entered Tel Aviv University at the tender age of 16. You studied philosophy and science and technology and worked with, physicians for human rights. And at 26, you successfully sold your first business. So I wanted to ask you, like, what inspired you to leave this traditional education model, which worked for you?
did not at all. Like, did not a slight bit, not a little bit worked for me. I mean, I was lucky to have amazing educators that saw me and supported my wildness through it. But I was definitely had to make a lot of deals with educators and headmasters to get through whatever I barely got through. So I wouldn't say it worked for me. I think
Version and what you actually got, but like why, okay, I just wanted to ask, like, why are you dedicating your life now to starting something like Bina? Is it to make up for what you didn't get your
I mean, I think if we wanna positively impact society in a way that is comprehensive, um, and there are plenty problems to solve right now. And I think everyone who has building capacity, right? Everyone who has the uh, who has the the luxury of being able to build, which is not a given, and most people don't get to do that for a variety of reasons. The least we could do is fulfill our responsibilities to that privilege and build things that people absolutely need. And so if we think about what are the things that people absolutely need, or at least for me, and if my kind of internal compass, the least I can do is leave at least positive impact on in whatever seconds I have left as a human on this planet. I think the most positive impact one can make is in education generally. That's my opinion. And so I am just fascinated with how we think about allocating resources into humans thriving and little humans thriving and their adults as well. And so I guess I got there through that. I had an understanding of privilege at a relatively young age, because I have the ability to build, and because I had the space to think, which is a privilege. And so I spent 6 years living nomadically and sitting in schools, and interviewing little humans and their adults to see what they think about the systems they operate within, and what are the differences and the similarities between the systems, to see if we could potentially think about a system upgrade reflecting the life we live today, and the resources that we have today, and kind of almost thinking about education systems from a business model perspective, given I think that's a huge opportunity, and saying, okay, how and why do resources go where in that system, and can we potentially build completely new experiences for everyone in that touching that system, of course the students and their families and their educators, and make it magical, right? Because we have opportunities today that we never had before. And so that's kind of how I started thinking about it. And I don't build an assumption of a solution. I actually built from a problem, which I care very deeply about and am dedicating my life to.
Gonna stay neutral. Very hard. So next, I would love to ask Kristen to step up, or just to if I can, yeah, put a light on you, shine a light on you for a second. So from what I've gathered from talking to Victor, is that this marks an important year for Prisma online schooling. When I first met Victoria, I think Prisma only went from 8 years to 12 years. And by the way, Noam is the early years online school. And then Prisma used to be from 8 to 12, but from what I've gathered, you guys had the 12-year-olds needed to go up, and this marks the first year where you're seeing your first graduates. Is that correct?
This is our first year of graduates, but actually the third year of our high school. So we started our high school about 3 years ago. We started our 4th through 8th grade program 5 years ago. And then 2 years in, we decided to launch our high school program with just 9th and 10th graders, a really small cohort of 10th graders that year, who then we've added 1 grade each year. And our first graduates are graduating this year, which is exciting, getting our first college acceptances in. We've got somebody who's been accepted to be a professional ballet dancer. So it's beautiful to see it coming to life.
I was going to ask, what would you say are the main differences about the Prisma students versus a student that might have gone through a traditional school? What are some unexpected benefits and breakthroughs that you've seen in that, even if it's a small cohort?
Oh, sure. I mean, we have the absolute best learners and families at Prisma. And I think the biggest thing we noted, and this really came to life for me. So we have this incredible parent community who's so involved, who's so engaged. And, we really have focused on that user-centered design with Prisma from the beginning. So like getting to know our learners and families, and some of our families have been like, oh, we're sort of itching for these in-person experiences. We love the virtual experience of Prisma and the community that's built, but, we want to see each other in person more. So our incredible parent community has started just this year. We have 3 week-long camps per year. So the first one was just in September, and I got to go up with my family and my daughters, and just seeing the Prisma learners in person at this adventure camp, I was like, wow. I mean, as an educator, my whole life, I've been a teacher, a dean, a principal. I spent a year traveling the country, founded a charter school. I've been on hundreds of school trips and field trips, and seeing the Prisma learners together, they were so independent, they were so self-sufficient, they were so kind, they were so inclusive. Didn't need to just shepherd them around. They knew what to do. And we have this concept of our 4 Prisma powers. So the idea of applied curiosity, like I can figure out what's interesting to me, and I can research, and I can go down rabbit holes, and I can figure it out. And I don't need to be told what to learn, but I find what's interesting to me about it and dive deep into it and do projects. We saw that coming to life with the learners. They organized a film festival for themselves that week and grouped themselves into the storyboarders and the production team, and really kind of working together to, this one project that they were all working on together, but following their own interests. That idea of applied curiosity that we think about. We think about innovators' mindset, how you don't need to be, memorizing random facts, but you should be in the real world, building things and creating things, and just the initiative that they took in putting together these projects. The communication and collaboration, how, we have a really diverse learner population at Prisma. We've got, about 60% of our families have been longtime homeschool families. We've got a subset of kids for whom the traditional education system just isn't working for social reasons. We've got learners who are gifted, who want to go at their own pace, who are 2E. So it's a really, diverse group of learners, and seeing them all come together. There was not one fight. There was not any moment of bickering or unkindness or anything like that. And that inclusivity that we really saw, and the way they were able to communicate and work through problems, and they're on climbing walls, supporting each other, which was incredible, communication and collaboration. And finally is initiative and follow through. So this whole week, the rest of Prisma, all the other learners worldwide are on calls, and these learners were too. You'd see them kind of working on their film festival part of them, like, oh, I need to jump on my collaborative problem solving workshop. I'll be back in an hour. Oh, I'm gonna dive into my project to make sure I don't get behind here. And just the way they were able to self-manage their time, truly in a way that I was not able to until, mid my career. They just have these skills that they've built from both, the structure of the program and, their incredible families and educators and all the people that have touched them, but really getting to see that come to life. You started talking about our first graduating class, seeing their capstone presentations and these projects that they've worked through for a whole year really coming to life at the end of their 11th grade year. I was like, wow, when you give kids that space and that freedom and allow them to follow their passions and their curiosity, you do see these Prisma powers and these real world skills coming to life. And, I can't wait to continue to follow them through their life journeys and see how that's all impacted them. So yeah, we're really grateful for the incredible, brave founding families that we had.
Staying neutral, very hard for me. Thank you. So next up, Kavita. Oh, there's so many places we could go with you, but I'm gonna pick. I know you're all about advocating for the empowerment of for empowered communities and this feminine spirit. So how might we co-create the conditions for young people to become empowered, creative problem solvers, which Kristen was just telling us about them doing that at a camp. But yeah, what would you say? Yeah, or I think it kind of correlates to what we've talked about before, but like the experience of collective flourishing, and when have you seen it, or what does it look like? Yeah, can you address it more on a empowered community and with a feminine spirit?
Absolutely. And thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm so excited to be connected to all these people, and good to see Annalise again, because we've met a few times. But yeah, this whole idea of empowered dignity and empowered creative problem solvers, all of that came about because I think most of us are here because of our own lived experiences, right? And what was present and we want to celebrate and have for everyone, and what was missing, and it feels like the experience that, when I've sort of had the time to reflect on it, that I was having in a school system, and then sort of in the culture and things that I was surrounded by, that actually the positioning of women, because you mentioned about the feminine spirit, wasn't very empowered, and it wasn't sort of like being able to be uplifted. And so as you were asking your question, the couple of things that were coming up for me was the work that we're doing and continuing to do because of now 10th graders in Ohio, in Kenya, and also what happened here in Colombia. So basically the couple of stories are that we were invited into the community of the Maasai in Kenya. And we were invited there because some young recent graduates in Kenya had visited the community with the intention of working with an award. It's called the President's Award in Kenya, Duke of Edinburgh in England, to work with the community to build a one-room school. And they took some books there as well. But in conversation with the community, they realized that actually they have greater needs than that. And so we got curious, and we found some partners in South America to support us with remaining curious with that community, and realized that actually, when we're looking to support different people, remaining in curiosity for a bit longer actually leads to that sense of self-empowerment for that community. And so, so we're now at a point where the 8th graders remained curious throughout their after-school club, and were able to establish connections between their own curiosities and their own interests with the needs of that community. And, they're now in 10th grade, and they're still working after hours and early mornings on Saturdays and Sundays to see if they can continue the project and create fundraising opportunities and so on, so that the community can actually have their real needs fulfilled, as opposed to, well, we built you a school because that's what we think everyone needs, kind of thing. And so so it was really interesting to do that. It sounds like no one wants
find
to
out what were their needs. Super interesting.
Well, it varies. So we used a particular tool that we surveyed 98 different households, And across the different households, there were diverse needs, but the biggest one that the community can't fulfill for themselves just because of the level of expense is access to clean water. But some of the other needs that were identified with the community, this approach gave them the opportunity to rally together and find different ways to support each other to fulfill the other needs, whether that was around health, whether that was around social coherence. There was, there's like 5 themes that we sort of work through in this work. And so it's really, sort of empowering in that way, but also sustaining ownership for the community, not just sort of saying, well, you gave us this information and now we're going to try and fix you or save you or, and, something like that. It's like, okay, let's share this information and figure it out together. What can we do? And then whatever's like really, really beyond, then the students have an opportunity to sort of live into that. And so using that as sort of like a launch pad, I guess, I'll sort of share a little bit about what just happened here in my time in Colombia, where we were invited into a school that is really, really doing some amazing things, really living into some of the ideals around creativity, they use peace circles and conflict resolution, and there's lots and lots of tools that they have available and they've made available to the students to create that sense of empowerment for the young people. The thing is, though, that reality is that people still find it difficult to get along sometimes, and one of the things about the curiosities that I've been following for the last few years is around human development and what is our indigenous wisdom, our lived experiences, and science teaching us about how we evolve as humans. And so some of the work that I've gotten really curious about has been done by some professors from my master's program. They're called the Lovemores, and they talk about the developmental stages of humans from 0 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 18, 18 to 23 and onwards. And what was happening was that the girls from the age of around 12 onwards had seen changes in their dynamics with each other. And so, we sort of showed up curious, like, okay, tell us more, what's happening. And they basically told us something that was really affirming to the research that I'd been sort of looking into, which was to say that we feel like no one really understands where I'm coming from. What's my perspective? And according to the Lovemores, that stage is the ideal being where it's really healthy to have conversations about values, about how we see the world, what we think an ideal world would look like, what is respect, and all of these different things. So the school invited me to spend a couple of hours with them. And it was just fascinating because we really dug deep into, okay, well, what does it mean to have feelings? And do we know how to name our emotions in a healthy way? And, like what level of vocabulary do we have that supports us to explain them more deeply? And then we got into, okay, and what are our values, and what's, what does this word values even mean? Like, what are we talking about here, and how might we identify them, and making those connections. So we asked for feedback afterwards, and they were explaining that they were so surprised at how different the values that they were, that they had chosen were, and but also where the potential for overlap was. But how for a few of them that have been having quite sort of, extended conflicts or whatever, it was like a real like moment where they were like, oh, so the lens that you're seeing the world is through these 3 values, and I'm seeing it through these 3 values. And that's why we're finding things like not quite sort of harmonious, like we're not able to collectively flourish, because like I really want to live in a world where things are done this way, and you really see the world working in this way. And then it was like, oh, okay, so let's extend from our top 3 down to our next 3. And it was like, oh, there's a bit more overlap here, so how can we use that as a way of coming together? And so, like a couple of them came, up to us afterwards and were like, oh, okay, like we feel like we've got a plan now of like how we can, understand each other more and move more towards that idea of collective flourishing. So, so yeah, so it's just really interesting, like what happens when you remain in curiosity for a bit longer, and what people reveal when you keep asking questions. And I'm a big fan of the 5 Whys protocol, and like how can we just keep being curious and see where that leads us.
Neutral. Thank you. And just the idea of collective, empowered communities, rather than like you siloed student must get your grades so that you get, it just changes the perspective completely. So next up, I would love to highlight Meredith. How do you envision future learners using technology to become empowered creative problem solvers? So what roles should technology play in schools of the future? And how do we ensure it enhances learning without compromising this human connection and this human, what is it? I love it, empowered community feel.
Oh my God. Okay. So there's a lot to
Unpack.
get into. I can go with this, I guess, thinking about what I think about in terms of AI and how it can partner with student learning and also partner with teacher assessment, for lack of a better word. So I think I can use my own research and my own activities at the school where I work as a basis for kind of talking about this. So I work at a charter school. It's pre-K through 12. It's in New York City, in the most diverse neighborhood in the world, Queens. There are 14 different languages spoken across the 2 schools where I work. These are 70% or more Spanish-speaking families. We have a pretty significant newcomer family. These are folks who have been displaced, who maybe have linguistic challenges. And our school was founded with a really radical concept that every learner should have access to problem-based learning, even if it doesn't fit as into everyday curricula. So we have a week-long enrichment program that I coordinate that is a massive undertaking. But what we find is that when we want it to be student-driven, students quickly sort of unlearn curiosity. So one of the challenges that we faced is we're saying, hey, we've got this week, you can do anything you want. We want to sit with you. We want to create an amazing week-long unit. What do you care about? Roller coasters. Okay, let's dive into the math behind, let's look at physics. We can apply all kinds of curiosities around roller coasters that go beyond just the fun of it. And there's that issue where students were having trouble kind of capturing their own curiosity because of this, what I call the imagination gap. So I think I envision imagination as a set of, neurocognitive skills, metacognitive skills. So I am focused on using AI as a partner for student learning and teacher learning, where it's a reflective, interactive tool. So in the case of the enrichment week, I designed a bot that interacts with students to say, hey, name anything you're curious about. And then it produces a proposal for the week's learning unit. Say, hey, well, you could do this, you could go here. I'm fortunate I live in New York City, so they have so many resources available. If you dream it, you can find a way to do it. Oh, I'm curious about sewing. Here's a place that does textile arts, etc. So I feel like my job as an educator and thinking about technology in the future is figuring out ways to harness the existing talents of teachers, of administrators, and especially of students, and empower them. So what I found when I was doing this bot, teachers were like, hey, I want to use that because I don't have time to develop a really comprehensive learning-based, project-based unit in the midst of all the other pressures that I have to do teaching at a traditional public school. We have assessments, we have benchmarks, we have, all of the things that are really limitations in a traditional system. So what we did was we used this bot, they came up with the products, we used the back end of the AI to see how students interacted with it so that we could follow their lines of curiosity to say, oh, well, no, I don't like that. I want to go somewhere that has more hands-on learning. So my passion is sort of asking this what if, we can get past or maybe move through AI as all the ethical challenges that are there. And I'm so curious to hear from this amazing panel, kind of what you're thinking about. I mean, AI is kind of the technology of the moment. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to get more complicated and more fascinating, I think, from my perspective. But yeah, I mean, I feel like systems and technology go hand in hand, and thinking about a global perspective and how do we connect kids so that they have a global learning access that they can benefit. Like hearing all of your schools, I just am blown away. I mean, I could never be a moderator because Carmel, I don't know how you're doing this without like jumping in and wanting to, I have so many questions, but that's in a nutshell, that's kind of where I come from.
FYI, the questions I'm going to ask you after I ask Annalise, were generated by ChatGPT.
It is a tool. Yeah.
Imagine if, yeah, why should humans, again, kids already have access to like global stuff, Google, but yeah, helping educators. Oh, neutral, Carmela, neutral. Okay, focus.
Well, and I will say, oh, and I just want to add that something that I found, just sorry, that's really interesting about if you can design your own AI tool, you can program it to have a human-based, you can put in, so what I'm building now is taking kind of all the problem-based learning materials that you guys are producing and turning it into an expert, basically, that can say, okay, well, let's apply this problem-based learning rubric as well. So you can kind of close the circle. So anyway, that's, sorry, I could go on, and I don't have enough people to talk to about this. I know, I'm so happy to be here. Okay.
We're gonna keep talking. We're gonna keep talking.
Okay.
Amazing. Oh, thank you, Meredith. So Annalise, so you're, and because technology in our house, we're like, okay, if you're gonna be on your iPads, we're gonna have to balance it out with nature. So since you're a huge advocate of taking kids out of school to learn in the real world, can you please tell us about the value of out of school learning and how to use non-traditional experiences as catalysts for children?
Absolutely. And I want to just say thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely humbled to be on this panel with these amazing, amazing humans. And that's part of the joy, right? So absolutely. Um, one of the things that is really, really important to me in the work that we do in my organization, the PASS Foundation, is recognizing that, students have so many experiences, and this idea of school as a singular thing, or unfortunately even worse, a place, right, that is super, super contained, right? That when we think of a student's journey, right, their journey towards living a fully fulfilled and participatory and contributing life, that if we are thinking about that end goal of the journey, that educational journey, being that human that's going to just contribute and take on the world in the most beautiful and wonderful sort of ways, to use to parrot Kavita, we want humans that are flourishing, right? They're not just thriving, but they're actually flourishing. And so to be able to do that, then we have to understand that every experience a child has along the way, it matters. It counts, or it should count. And I guess maybe that's the thing, right? When we step back, regardless of where you are in the world, there are often a set of constraints or requirements that we have to fulfill. Even if we choose to take our children out of a traditional setting, we're going to homeschool our kids, all of those things. At the end of the day, though, there's still a set of constraints that you're working within. Right. And so one of the pieces of work that we want to do, we're very different in the educational landscape because we are a tribe at the PASS Foundation of anthropologists, engineers, educators, designers, artists, you name it. Kavita has been there several times. And it's a place that we think about education from an industry R&D perspective, right? And we think that every child who walks through our doors or that we interact with is capable of solving the world's greatest problems. We teach them through those experiences, literally how to do R&D. I'm going to take a problem that I'm working on. It can be anything, right? And then I'm going to learn a set of processes that over the course of my lifetime, I can use time and time again, right? To help me with my own resilience, the way that I'm thinking, my view of the world, the places that I want to go, the contributions that I want to make. And I'm going to learn everything I need to learn to solve that problem in the moment that I need it. And then I'll have it. It's going to always be in my backpack or my toolbox, and I'm going to pull it out and reapply it to every experience I have. So for us, the greater the opportunity to get kids fully entrenched in the real world and not sitting in an artificial setting, which is often traditional school, then suddenly there's going to be this power that happens. You know, the kids that are with us, they're incredibly empowered. I tell people all the time that I would put our kids up against any industry R&D team in the world. And they're not always going to come up with the solution. But what I can promise you is these kids will come up with incredible possibilities. And I have watched industry R&D teams as these kids pitch their solutions to that industry's problem, right? That the industry sort of handed over and said, okay, look, you guys tackle this instead of us. Just minds blown. Like, I never even thought about that. And one of the reasons that this happens, right? One of the reasons that this happens is that as we go through life towards adulthood, and if that journey we keep bumping into over and over again, the confinement of a traditional setting, what happens is we lose the ability to be curious, to problem solve, and to be creative. That's just part of the human evolution of the journey. And so we forget. And so one of the reasons why kids are so incredibly creative, just boundless imagination, is because they haven't bumped up against that constraint yet. And so, one of the things that we know we want is to be able to make sure that as students, they get a lot of these really robust and immersive experiences, and B, that somehow those experiences contribute to counting towards whatever that thing is we have to do. Right. So, in the US, it's high school graduation before you do X, Y, or Z. Right. As an example, okay, well, then how are we going to get there? And why does it have to be that I go to school for 12 years, that I sit in, in algebra 1 and then geometry and then algebra 2, and then, see what I'm saying? All of that is artificial. Every single element of what we're just talking that, is artificial. And so what would happen if instead we provide a set of experiences and then a set of tools, and we've built a tool so that we can capture all of these experiences and then translate that inside of the traditional setting into the requirements that meet ABCD, right? So we really, really want to be able to do both, because unfortunately that's the world that we live in, right? So we still have to get these kids to meet whatever that requirement is, but we do not have to do it the same way. I have a great colleague at PAST who says there's nothing on statute, there's nothing in your union contract that says you have to teach this way. What it says is that you have to teach.
Mhm.
So for us, as we really, really step back and think about that, we want to make sure that, kids have so many robust experiences that they learn and grow all of those amazing skills that we want them to have, and that they have a sense of autonomy to be co-designers of that journey with you, and for themselves, most importantly. And it is really, really remarkable about the different things that these kids will and are capable of doing if the adults will just get out of the way. So when I think about it, and people ask me all the time, and I write about this all the time, what does it look like? What does that school look like in your mind? And for me, it's somebody drives into a community and they stop someone on the street and say, you know, where's the high school? And, you know, that individual in the street says, well, which kids are you looking for, right? The kids that are interested in healthcare, well, they're all at the hospital doing XYZ, right? Or the kids that are interested in engineering, well, they're down building a bridge across the river. Or the kids that are interested, you know, in computer science, well, they're all at the cybersecurity center, right? That we really unwall and unbox this idea that this is what it should look like, because we want learning linked to life. That's a tagline at PASS, linking learning to life. And we believe that with every fiber of our being. Stop there. Could go on forever.
Well, I think you answered the question I was going to ask. So does anyone else want to answer this? Which is, looking 30 years ahead, what is your vision for the future of schools and learning environments? Anyone else on the panel?
Happy to take the first bite at this piece. I'm sure everyone has quite a lot to say, but I think, again, like if we use the digital wonders to enhance human connection, which is a very important piece, right? So obviously we can build experiences that were never ever possible before, the expensive and dangerous and inefficient and impossible, right? So of course we can go and in the not so far future talk to an octopi that would tell us all the different stories in the world of different myths that have to do with their kind, and then maybe if we ask kindly, they would allow us to their bloodstream so we can check out why the compound makes it blue, right? So we can easily imagine that type of learning experiences where, like, as we move from, learning is a set of activities, not a place. And we can move to interactions that are both local and global at the same time, but maintain some things that, at least for the ages I deal with, which might be very, very different for the rest of you, because I deal with the little ones, or we rather deal with the little ones. But the notion of an emotionally held learning space with an adult that kind of carries that through, I think will remain. I feel very strongly about the future of human activity lying in teaching and care. And so I think what we should do when we are building the next sets of educational experiences for, again, little humans and their adults, those are the things that I would kind of consider. How do we support the humans that do teaching and care to the best of our abilities? Like, what those systems look like and behave, and how do we support human flourishing around for everyone involved, like from, of course, the students and families and their educators, and how we build those support systems with eliminating stuff that we like less, and moving evaluation, for example, to a continuum, from periodic old school testing to moving like planning to new exciting ways to do that, right? And balancing personalization and standardization and with empowered balance, let's say that, which I think is another thing that we'll definitely see. And then again, the local and the global coming together, where you may be learning with kids that are the best fit for you and the educators that are the best fit for you in your time zone. But, you play ball and smell armpits with the kids that are around you. And I think that's kind of the, and obviously, as Annelies suggested, potentially go build the next vehicle or go work with the nurses. So I think that's part of it. And I think when we build, maybe potentially start thinking about how do we, and when we build for a world that invests heavily into tech and less into human flourishing, like how do we consider the build to reshape that, right? So those are some thoughts.
Well, ladies, just because I am the cabinet bishop and I am looking out for time, I did want to give some room for questions. If someone, while someone is thinking of, if you have a question, maybe write it in the chat box. And we will ask it to the panel. Otherwise, is there anyone else who wanted to talk about their vision of the future of schools and learning environments, or are there
I
any?
can chime in quickly. I know we're running low on time, but I was very inspired and in agreement with what Noam was saying around community and connection and that global, world that we can live in instead of this hyper localized environment of where your local school is. In the future of education, it really can be opened up to finding people with your same interests and passions all over the world. And I think another piece to that is this personalized learning piece, which is that, the school systems were built to be one size fits all. Everybody follows this curriculum or reads this book. And I think a really common element, and what everybody on this panel has been saying, is that it doesn't need to be that way. So how can we break away from the everybody has to do this thing to a more user-centered or individual learner inspired education system that does start with curiosity and start with passion and allow learners to go deep, and of course to incorporate all different elements of what they're interested in. Meredith, and you're talking about the roller coasters and physics and fun and enjoyment. There's so many different places that you can take that. So how can we design an education system that really unleashes learners' curiosities and passions and is specifically designed to them, and not on their own, not in a silo, but alongside mentors and alongside peers and alongside others who are interested and passionate about the same things, because we're all so unique and different and have different interests and passions. So why are we all learning the same things in schools? We don't need to be, and it doesn't need to be that way. And that's really where, we see the future of education, as well as that personalized piece along with community and connection.
I think Victoria summarized it perfectly. She said, one size fits all fits nobody.
Yeah.
Can I just add something quickly, just to say that yes, curiosities and passions and everything is really important, not just for the little ones, but for the adults. And the wondering that I always have when people ask us to project into the future is, how are we going to create the conditions for all of us, male, female, non-binary, whatever, it doesn't matter which country you're born in, all of the sort of false status differences that we create between us. How are we going to create the conditions for all of us to really find that possibility for flourishing? Because the question that sort of comes up for me oftentimes is that, people bring children into the world, and that's great, but that's not their whole existence. Like a lot of people, a lot of parents, like love their children and want the best for their children and all of these things, but they also have their own passions and interests that they want to pursue, and like somewhere it feels like the balance or the harmony between young children that then become adult and become parents, being able to flourish in their own right, as well as the young people that they're bringing into the world flourishing in their own right. There's something not working, and I kind of just want to plant that seed in this sort of group of like, does anyone else feel this way? I can offer some specific anecdotes of some specific people, but I'm just really curious about how might we sort of deal with that, that like, yeah.
I would love to connect what Christian said and Kavita, what you just said. I think at least again, we deal with very young families in many ways, and we do see that parents are struggling in a very deep way So we're crafting a lot of support for them, and that's a big chunk of what we do. But in some way, I do think that we are living in a time where individualism has peaked, hopefully. And so with kind of our understanding of, yes, I do think that people are unique. I also think that in many ways they're not. And we have to understand how to balance these two things. For example, again, I deal with very little kids. Yeah, I mean, maybe the pathways to get to different places can be crafted according to the child. However, like, they should know how to read. Like, that is definitely a requirement, right? And that should happen at a certain point at their development if we don't want to hinder their possibilities as they grow, right? So there's several things that we're like, okay, like, there's a building block, there's a developmental phase. We do know quite a bit from learning sciences until now on like when that needs to happen. We can do a lot of things to make sure that it's amazing when it happens. It kind of should happen, right? So I do think that, you know, as we peak with kind of the sense of individualism, and maybe this is a little bit controversial, but I think people are very busied with the self for a very long time. I actually think that one of the reasons why families are struggling so much, because they don't live in supportive communities. They're more busied about what they're getting and how they're going to grow, and they're not busied with what they can contribute and how they can support. And what it makes is that we all work quadruply hard. And I think something about like nuclear families have evolved and what it did to women is kind of impossible. And we see that kind of effect happen, like kind of showing up on our families, on our kids, in our educators. And I think one of the ways that we can start thinking about shifting that through education is really is really kind of promote mutual reliance, and kind of the feeling of mutual responsibility, which I think, generationally speaking, might have positive impact.
Gonna take the moderator hat off for 2 seconds. But yes, the nuclear family's gotta go. Like, it's just too much pressure on, and we're all caretaking in like little boxes, makes no sense. Like, really none. We're all cooking this, you know, when
Exactly. Like, why are you making dinner and I'm making dinner? Can someone explain that to me?
reading one book to one child, like in one living room, like, it makes no sense. Like, kids want to be with the other kids. As soon as you put them together, they're like, yay, we're like, yay. But so I do, yeah. So architecturally, the whole white picket fence thing, no. Okay, back on. So do we have any questions? And we don't, otherwise I have one last question, then we can close it off for today. But you guys are all prime examples of women in leadership roles. What advice would you give to other women, especially mothers, who want to challenge traditional systems, whether it's in education or beyond? What would you say to them?
I think I'm going to
I'll
take
start.
that one first.
Oh,
No,
no,
go
no,
ahead,
go
Anis.
ahead, Kavita. No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to be really short. One of the curiosities that I'm having currently is supporting women through transitions in their life, whether they're changing career, relationships, you know, like it could be anything, menopause, like whatever, anything. But the point is that the feedback that I've been getting as I started to do this research around this curiosity that I have right now is that it's how to put it, okay, let me just say how one of the women said it. I don't know myself, so I don't know where I'm going next. Like, and like one of the big things is that, like, she really when we sort of asked this question about identity, she was like, well, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a, you know, and then job titles, and then I'm this, and then I'm that, and it was like, yeah, but who do you want to be? And yeah, you know, and so the question, I guess, like, you know, the answer that I'm offering at this point is like, can we share more resources with each other to ask ourselves some of those questions that will lead us to be the leader of our own lives, you know, and yeah, what does that mean?
my hat. There is a cultural element to that, and what I'm noticing is Latin mothers have a very different approach to rearing than Scandinavian or Icelandic women. So I do think comparing of like, wait a minute, women over there are doing it this way. Like, why am I being a martyr or self-sacrificing? But Annalise, I think you were going to say something as well before.
Yeah, so I guess I would just add to that, my advice is always to say yes. And here's the reason I want to share this. We, from a global human cultural perspective, right? We have a tendency, an evolutionary and culturally identity sort of perspective, where we step back. We watch, we observe, and we think, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes, and certainly depending on what your educational experience, the culture, to your point, Carmela, that you're living in, we forget to opt in, or we get so bogged down with everything else that opportunities come. And so when we're talking about this idea of children being able to go out into the world and have 1,000 different experiences, and those experiences should count and should matter, the same holds true for the adults in the world. And too often what I see is some opportunity, something comes along, and we hesitate. Instead of just saying yes, go have the experience. It could be positive, it could be negative, it could be something in between. But the reality is, you will learn from that. And to Kavita's point, it will help you inform yourself. Who do I want to be in the world? And I will never get there if I don't say yes.
Yes, and there was that comedian who was just like, I'd love to lean in, but I'm exhausted. I need to lie the fuck down. She's just like, I'm done leaning in. So I think resting first and then being like, yes. Well, ladies, thank you so much for coming to the top of the hour, or the bottom of the hour. Grateful. Thank you for your time, for your involvement. Nothing inspires me more than organizing gatherings for women and fostering this global sense of connection and purpose. So thank you. Wishing you all a lovely evening or day wherever you are, and hope to see you for panel number 2. Bye bye. Thank you.
She meant.
Thank you.